treat for you this evening. A guy who was once offered the position of Chief Procurement Officer at Telkom, but he declined. He was part of the executives who led a mass exodus from SAA in 2012, and his story reads a little bit like a John Grisham book, maybe Wilbur Smith or somebody else. Hopefully, not one of those murder books at all. But this is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and tonight I'm joined by the Chief Executive of Ansys, Daka, to discuss how he reclaimed his identity, reinvented the niche technology-driven engineering solutions company, which he now runs, and which has just been awarded a 120 million rand contract from Transnet to supply its refined vehicle identification system. Big words for big contracts. Daka, nice to see you. Take me back a bit. You've been involved in technology for probably most of your career?
Yeah, I mean, I used to work for Rio Tinto. After that, I joined Telkom, which is also a technology business. Then after that, I went into business. I had a consulting business, but then I get involved in technology companies. And back then, 2002, that's when I got involved with Ansys.
Why did you bail on Telkom?
I had reached a stage in my life where I didn't feel like having another corporate job. I mean, I had an ambition that if possible, I have 4 lives. I would do development, then I'll do corporate, then I'll do business, then retire in the academia. So I'm on the journey.
Oh yeah, you're not yet in academia?
Not yet.
Just checking.
But I'm on the journey.
Checking. 2002 you get involved in Ansys. Ansys we know as a relatively small player listed on AltX, supplies technology to railways, and in South Africa you got one client, and that one client is Transnet.
Look, at that stage, the client was actually Denel, not railways. It was predominantly a defense company. We used to make crash recorders, black boxes, but we grew into avionics, weapon systems, and all the kind of defense stuff, technology defense. And then with my involvement in the previous management, we decided to diversify, because at that stage, if you think back in the early 2000s, defense expenditure had gone down in the country. So we began to diversify, and that's when we went into the railways domain to go into other markets. And yes, so Transnet is one of our biggest client, but certainly in the railways domain, not the only client, because we have also gone vertically in terms of upstream and downstream. So we supply Transnet suppliers, and we also work with Transnet's customers. For example, on the customer side, we work with Exaro, some of the mining companies, because they also want similar technology, Sasol. From the supplier side, we supply Toshiba, we supply GE, people that supply.
But from a rail perspective, because I remember when Ansys listed, there was lots of hype around this was going to be the rejuvenation of the railways. And we've seen Transnet focus specifically on the iron ore lines from Sishen to Saldanha and other crucial arteries in South Africa, because generally the rail system is in a pretty poor shape. Government keeps telling us we're in for high-speed rail and all kinds of other treats, arms deal size spending packages which are being considered for this. Is it ever a prospect in South Africa?
It is a prospect, and we're benefiting from that. If we talk about rail, Transnet's infrastructure spend from 2012 is about 300 billion. And that's split between what on the trackside stuff with the pure infrastructure, and then they're also spending on the locomotives. And in both, we have very serious spending. In fact, we're sitting probably over 400 million in terms of our contracts that we have as a business at the moment, a big chunk of it being in the railways domain. Trackside, this is technology that we supply on and is put on the side of a railway line. And
it's basically tracking. It's like a GPS for trains.
Well, it's more than a GPS. Not only do we track where the wagon is, but we also identify where it is located within the consist. We weigh it, we check the wheel alignment, we check the wheel profile, if it's okay, we check if things are falling out of the train. In case it goes into a bridge, it can knock on a pilot. And we collect all this data which goes to a central point, and then they can advise the driver or work on their scheduling in terms of maintenance.
You're a super quick for trains, in other words, on that particular. I don't mean to simplify it or oversimplify it at all. But on that front, so the Ansys business is going well. Gibela is an interesting project which has come online now. Of course, the French are helping us build commuter trains. Will you have a piece of that action?
Yes, I mean, we're talking to Alstom at the moment in terms of supplying them onboard systems now. One of the requirements that they have is to know whether the train is too complete if one coach has gone out or the other. They want to know voltage and other systems, and this is where Ansys is quite good at. So we're developing some technology that they can use on the train sets that they're going to put that. That's part of our onboard system
Your involvement in Ansys is interesting because at a time when nobody would go anywhere near it, you put your own money into it. You bought something like 40% of the equity, I think. Was that pre-listing?
Yeah. Pre-listing, I bought about 42% equity of the company. It was very small, then it grew and we listed. Those were good times. I sold some shares during the listing, made a bundle, thanks to that. Boom times.
And then the share price, is it a fraction of what it listed at?
Yeah. After some time, the business went in some difficulties, and the past 5 years have been extremely difficult.
Why?
Well, there's a number of reasons. First of all, the infrastructure spend went down. I don't blame the market. I always think that if a company is caught out with the market changing, it simply means that as executives, we're slow in reacting to what's happening. So I'm not blaming the market, but the reality is the market did go down itself, and the company was just slow to react to what's happening in the market. So what I've done is just to realign the business to the type of market that we're in, spreading their revenue so we're not reliant on one client, but at the same time moving it more to an IP-led technology company, and that's what we do. So
do we have sufficient IP in South Africa, so original IP in South Africa to sustain a business like Ansys?
Yes. If we talk about railways, for example, 80% of the railways network spent on the continent is in South Africa, although we do business with Namibia and we do with Botswana, and we're growing into the SADC region. But the bulk of the spending is actually in South Africa. On the telecommunication side, which we're also involved in telecoms, with the fiber to the curb or the FTTX rollouts, you're talking about 80 billion rand that's being spent in that area, and we right smack in that space.
But we look at how Telkom has let us down as a country over the last decade and a half through its failure to invest, its failure to provide the fibre to the home. It's been something of a disgrace. As a former employee, senior employee of Telkom, you must look back at that lost opportunity with some regret.
It has been a lost opportunity, but right now at the moment Telkom is actually leading in that area of fibre to roll out at the moment, and they're investing quite new technologies in that area, and I'm proud to say that part of that is what we supply Telkom today.
Aren't they shutting the barn door after the horses bolted though? They've left the door open for so many private sector, for so many wireless operators. So much of the future is LTE, and it's all stuff that's being carried through the air rather than through the cables.
Long-term evolution is good, but you also will find that fiber can carry more bandwidth than what long-term evolution can ever do on a wireless basis. So fiber now you can push 10 gigs in one fiber plus more, higher than that, which is still an attractive proposition. The demand for content is the one that is pushing the fiber rollout. Even the wireless operators are actually installing fiber. So you're getting this fixed mobile interaction that is happening in that space.
The Altron Group has come out with a box. We've got the Times Media Group has come out with a box. Naspers has got its boxes as well. HCI with ETV has got boxes coming out too. How many of these will last, do you think, in a relatively small market like South Africa?
I'm not sure, but at the moment we're just like in terms of that the bubble hasn't burst yet, because telecoms has just proved one thing, that there's always something new that is coming about, which is pushed by the need for data. These boxes are coming around simply because of people's need for additional data, smartphones, smart boxes and things like that. So I think we're still far away for that to burst, if at all it is a bubble.
Well, and we've got maybe a South African bubble because there's lots of stuff offshore just waiting at the gate to be let in. If you look at Apple TV and you look at all of these kinds of services, Amazon's got its own TV service, and of course there's Netflix, which many South Africans would love to have access to.
Our approach is Ansys because we're an OEM in our own right. When we develop technology, my instructions to my engineer is very simple. You should be able to produce this technology cheaper and sell it cheaper than what the Chinese can do. And we are
Is that possible?
Yeah, and we are beating Chinese companies. So we have technology that they can't even do. If you look at our rope monitoring systems, that's a world first that we have developed, and we can produce and develop it cheaper in country than doing it outside the country.
Export markets?
We do test for that.
Export markets then?
That's the area that we're looking at the moment. We're talking to the Canadians and we're talking to the Australians and the Chinese themselves for potential export to...
It would be nice to have some exports going the other way towards China. Quickly on SAA, you were there until 2012. There was a massive walkout in 2012, and that's when Russell Loubser at the time came out with the famous, his hutful comment, as he came out and was massively outspoken about his decision to walk away from the board of SAA. Recently, we've seen 4 non-executive directors of SAA announce that they would not be putting themselves up through the ordeal of a general meeting. rather than be fired unceremoniously at that general meeting. Why is SAA such a mess?
I don't think it's an SAA issue alone. I think we have to think in terms of our state-owned companies, the way we manage them in South Africa. State-owned companies are predominantly different in some ways with private sector companies in three ways. That's the governance, the ownership, and the purpose. Now, if those three areas are not properly defined and not done properly, you will get the kind of problems that you experience with an SAA. Anywhere in the world, if you mess up with the ownership, the governance, and that. And I think what you're seeing in SAA is because one of those three areas is not being managed properly. I don't think it's a question of that we don't have good pilots or good skills or things like that.
The airline experience is brilliant.
Oh,
I mean, if you fly domestically, you have a fantastic experience. The overseas flights are fine. The flights, the network, and the African network is solid. But it is about the way in which it's managed, and it's about political oversight.
I read an article the other day written by Sandile Zungu, who, in an interview, actually say that one of the challenges is how professionals that go into these SOEs, in terms of how they're managed by the shareholder, it creates problems for them to do that.
Basically, what Sandile Zungu is saying is, why would anybody with any skills, any talent, any ambition in their right mind go for one of these jobs?
But that's the same with any company. If the governance is not properly managed,
your reputation is harmed.
If your owner is in the street and everybody has a view in terms of what you do, you walk in the street, somebody says you need to privatize, and privatization is being explained as if it's the panacea for everything. Now, the fact of the matter is that there's a space, even the doyen of economics himself, Adam Smith, did recognize that there are areas of market failures where sometimes the state has to play a role. So in the case of our SOEs, some of them there's a case, some of them there is no case for government to be in that space. Now, the debate on SAA, whether it should be in private hands or state hands, it doesn't necessarily mean that if it's in state hands, therefore company will perform badly. Look at Ethiopian Airlines, look at Singapore when it started. And the list is quite long of state-owned airlines that have done predominantly well. We're just battling with our own state-owned companies in terms of how we're managing them. But some of them are doing quite well, their gems, and I'm sure we can learn from those.
Well, we should be looking at the current Telkom example and the current Transnet example of two state-owned enterprises that are showing good signs of promising turnaround. Teddy Daka, nice to see you. Thanks very much for coming in and sharing the story of Ansys and a whole bunch more as well. He's been around as Teddy Daka. Thank you for watching. There'll be more tonight, tomorrow. Till then, good night and goodbye.